Okay, I had the pleasure of going to Oshkosh about a month ago. I consider myself to be quite lucky. I went with primarily 3 other people who looked after me, not in any special sort of a way, but they knew so much about Oshkosh that I was in excellent company. Murray Korf, put up your hand so we can see who you are. There's Murray, he was leader of the push. David Kleeman, and George. Where's George? Yes. Thank you for your company while we're away. Before I left, John Douglas told me a lot about Oshkosh, and he gave me so much information, it just didn't seem to fit in. I couldn't believe all the things that he told me. I went and had a look, and now I've come back. I don't think I can adequately describe to you what I saw while I was there and the experiences that I had. The Oshkosh scene is the home of the Experimental Aircraft Association, who have been in operation since 1953, and the Oshkosh Air Show has been on for the last 27 years. It's been getting bigger and better every year. The show is running like clockwork, and you'll get an idea of the scale, or some idea of the scale, because as I've said, I can't really transfer to you exactly how big it is. Okay, the path to Oshkosh, pretty tortuous. It took me 5 hours to get to Singapore, where I had about a 5-hour break. 7 hours to Narita, where I had a 2-hour break. Another 10 hours across the Pacific there to Los Angeles. And that wasn't even to Oshkosh. From Los Angeles, the first part of the flight was on Singapore Airlines, the second part on American Airlines, and that got me to Chicago, where I recouped for 2 days. Once in Chicago, you've got to go north to Oshkosh. On the Saturday night, I met Murray Korf, George and David, and we had a nice meal, and on the Sunday we set out in a SUV to drive the distance to Oshkosh. We got to Oshkosh and we stayed with some very nice American people. The 4 of us were there, and 4 others, 2 husbands and wives, or 2 pairs, stayed at the same house, and we were looked after magnificently. Oshkosh Airport looks a bit like that. That's taken from the internet, and it takes place at Whitman Regional Airport. It's not a very important airport from a regional point of view, but it's certainly important from the point of view of the Experimental Aircraft Association. There are 4 squares there, and that indicates where there's 4 rather large buildings which has displays, industry displays, where you can have a look at all sorts of products to do with aviation. And the circle is where the control tower is. The control tower is manned by retired air traffic controllers who work on a voluntary basis. They handle an enormous amount of traffic. I've been told, and some of these numbers are mind-blowing, but I've been told they can handle 3,000 aircraft in a day.
I'm sorry, that's not right.
Not right?
No, I was there to handle 3,000 airplanes in 3 hours.
In 3 hours, okay. I may be able to give you some idea of how this happens, but the aircraft approaching Oshkosh pass over a certain ground point where they're advised. For fast aircraft, if you look down in the bottom corner there, faster aircraft are asked to maintain 135 knots at 2,300 feet, and slower aircraft are asked to operate at 90 knots, if they can, at 1,800 feet. They have a ground VFR set of signals for people to follow so they arrive at the right place. And they all arrive in one piece. On the runway, which is in use, there are, I understand, 4 markers. I didn't fly while I was there, so I didn't have a look at this, but this is what I am informed of. And aircraft approach and are asked to land on a certain number. So you can have 4 aircraft approaching that runway at one time, and they just all just come in and manage it quite well. In the brochures that I put out, this is where you're likely to find aircraft on display. Up the top there's warbirds, and quite a huge array of them. Over a dozen Mustangs there. You know, I get excited when I see one Mustang, and when you see a dozen of them in a row, it really makes you feel as if you're in the centre of the universe. Home-built, vintage aircraft, hundreds and hundreds of them. In this area here, I would say there would have been 200 or more vintage aircraft. Show planes down there. I didn't even get that far down. I was there for a week. I was there for 6 to 8 hours a day, and I couldn't get that far down in the system. In the camping area up here, I'm only guessing, but there must have been 1,000 to 2,000 aeroplanes. It was a sea of aluminium. Aircraft parked nose to tail, tents under wings, etc. People camping out, having a really good time. I would think there'd have to be 1,000 to 2,000. Car parking, the facilities were fantastic. Car parking, plenty of it. We didn't seem to have any trouble getting in or getting out, and it was just amazing how it worked. There was a museum that we visited. We're only there for about half a day. You could easily spend a whole day there. There was a bus and tram network to cart people around, and the dotted lines give you some idea of where they travelled. If you had to travel more than about 200 or 300 metres, it was probably worthwhile getting onto a tram. There's a camping area, tents and so on there. Once again, the number of people in there, I'm not quite sure, but there was plenty of them there. Even to the tune that they had an outdoor evening movie show there, so that the people in the camping area had something to do. With all these people in the camping area and camping under the wings of their aeroplane at the top, the place never went to sleep. It was alive the whole time. Just very quickly, some of the aircraft that I saw: home-built, microlights, ultralights, light aircraft, small jets, light twins, experimental aircraft, current military aircraft, vintage, and warbirds, all there in great numbers. Equipment displays, hundreds of them, within those 4 buildings that were on the first image that I showed you. There were speed events, aircraft attempting speed events, mock air attacks with explosions all over the place, mass flyovers. One group of maybe 50 aircraft came in from one angle, and maybe just 100 or maybe 200 or 300 feet below, another 30 or 40 came in from the other direction. There was a seaplane base. We went out there for a morning and really enjoyed it, and there was joy rides in choppers, B-17, Ford Trimotor, etc. The entertainment, and I didn't attend a lot of this, but on the opening night there was a gathering of Eagles dinner, and some of the attendees were John Travolta, Bob Hoover, Arnold Palmer and Harrison Ford, so I'm led to believe. It was by invitation only. There was a rock band on the Monday night, the concert orchestra was there was a golf day, 5-kilometre fun run, as I mentioned, open air movies in the museum. There was an international tent where international visitors were welcomed, and if you put your name or your country of origin on, you had no trouble talking to people. We put a pin in Perth, Western Australia, to let people know we were there. There was a daily newspaper, free, which you could just get out of the newspaper stand, full of information. There were photographic competitions, there were workshops where you could learn skills. I attended one on riveting and one on woodwork. A writer's workshop also I attended, and there were lectures. I attended one on aircraft performance. There was a flea market where you could buy or swap, or mainly buy, aircraft parts and appliances. To give you some idea of the scale of things, there were 3,000, I'm led to believe, 3,000 volunteers to help the show on the road. these volunteers got around in 100 buggies. Those that didn't get a buggy ended up on a motor scooter. They reckon there was nearly 100 of those there as well. So that was just for the officials to get around on. And when they talk about 3,000 aircraft an hour, as I was reliably informed, this is how they do it. They come in and taxi through, and therefore, in the top one here, bonanzas, and they park them all together so that the bonanza lovers can talk to their friends. All of the aircraft are beautifully prepared, polished up for the day. Cessnas, hundreds of those lined up as well. Piper Comanches, we're lucky to see one or two of them here, and yet over there there's countless numbers, maybe hundreds of them arrive there. Same with Moonies, all over the place. You can't quite see tents underneath the wings of those, but under the Cessnas and other aircraft there were. Car parks, there were 5 or 6 car parks, and they're as full as that every day. Campers, people were in their possible thousands. Top photograph there is a tram, which you get around on, and we use them fairly often to get from one end of the establishment to the other. And that's an international welcome below, and the international tent was open all day, every day, for people to go and associate. And this is the man that started it all. Paul, I can't pronounce his name, but that's him. He brought up the idea of the Experimental Aircraft Association, put it all together in 1953. That's him sitting down in the chair there, giving a talk to a group of people on day number 1 on how he got started and what he did. This gives you some idea of the number of people that get there. I'm only guessing. If anyone's got any update on this, I would think there could have been 700,000 to 1 million people there. I think they've got 100,000 people easily every day. 830? 830,000 people there in a week. There was a Liberator on display, a Lockheed Lightning, a Spitfire, American military car. These were over near the museum, and this display near the museum were probably wheeled out of the museum, and they weren't flying types. I don't know whether the Liberator was a flying aircraft either.
Yes, it was.
It was? Okay, it was a goer. Forgot to mention that Murray Fletcher was there. Put up your hand, Murray. Out of the 800, oh, another one?
Yeah.
Didn't see you. Out of the 830,000 people, I think I saw everyone else.
Couldn't find Murray.
It was great to see Mustangs in the air every day. I get excited about the noise they make here, and yet I found myself turning my back on a Mustang. I couldn't believe I was doing it. Sea Fury in Australian colours, Australian markings. It was great to see that there. Boeing B-17. David Kleeman went for a fly in that. $400, was it, David?
Yeah, that's money I've never spent. It's the second time.
There you go, second time doing it. Back at it again. I think that was a Mitchell, is that right? Looks like a Mitchell to me. Kitty Hawks, War Hawks, I know they're dear to some people who come along here because they flew them in World War II. They were there and flying, and the noise they make is very similar to a Mustang. I'm not quite sure what engine it is, but it's got to be a V12. Allison. The Spitfire, Mosquito, these were at the museum in an outside display. I'm sure they're going up after the Oshkosh week. Pairs of Mustangs, Corsair, flying and doing all sorts of tricks. Some of the kit-built aircraft were there. That's a BD-5J, a bloke called Bede designed them and got them off the ground in the early days. We're a couple here, one pranged here 6 months or so ago, but that one's a jet. And RV aircraft, they're everywhere. Someone here today has built an RV, haven't they? Yep, there he is. I didn't get the name of the float plane, but there were displays of aircraft, salesmen pushing them right, left and centre. I would guess there were probably 100 or more aircraft for sale there, brand new on display. Within those buildings, the 4 buildings I was talking about, there are hundreds of displays in each building, and representatives from different companies were pushing their wares, and you could see what was available for aircraft in every avenue. Flexible ferry tanks, not the sort of thing you buy every day, but they're on display there. Aircraft.
Australia. Made in Australia.
Oh, made in Australia, right.
Flags in the middle there.
Gotcha. Yes. I also came across some people over there who were pushing some Australian-made, or the concept was an Australian idea, for retractable floats for a seaplane, which fold up into a pannier underneath the aircraft rather than having them out where they normally are. Workshops on everything. I said I went to one on riveting, but you could go to them on welding, drilling, woodwork, metalwork, you name it. If you were thinking of building an aeroplane or building one, you could learn the skills there. Down the bottom right there, this chap is building a Blériot aeroplane, a replica of a Blériot, and he's going to power it with that Anzani engine, which is just a year or two off being 100 years old, and he ran it every day. The air show. I've only been talking about the miscellaneous things that go on there. The air show took place at 3 o'clock every day. There was flying before the air show and late into the day, but the air show was the big bit. And it started with the American flag. There was a DC-3 out of which 6 men jumped, 5 smaller flags, and 1 very big one, as you can see there. Go back. Circling.
Girlfriend.
Circling the flag during its descent, 2 aircraft with smoke on, building up a sort of a cone. Coming down to the landing spot. 3 parachutes hovered over the top, sort of protecting it, and 2 others came down and landed first. It was quite a moving experience, and at about 400 feet they'd start playing the American national anthem, and they attempted to have it finish as the parachutist with the big flag touched the ground. The commentator for the whole 7 days was the same person, and he did a marvellous job. Like everyone else who was involved, it was riveting stuff all the time. During the air show, from time to time, there was a bit of wing walking, and I got this photograph with that lady there. She is an ex-wing walker. So I really had to get my photograph taken, so Murray Corf obliged me there. She also had thousands of parachute jumps, and a pretty game lady. And when the 6 parachutists, which I just spoke about, came down with their flags, they were driven around in cars, and every time they went past her, they doffed their hats and pointed to her and cheered to her because of the respect they had for her. So that's her husband. I think he owns 7 aeroplanes. Both of these have been grand champions at Oshkosh. They're perfectly restored. And this is her aircraft, which she flew in and flew out. We've got Peter Yates here today. You know who Peter Yates is. He's spoken to us a couple of times at these meetings, and he is going to tell us how to fly into Oshkosh one of these days, because this year he flew a T6 in there.
Brian, can I just interrupt you for a second? I was a guest of that guy last year,
Yeah.
and he's in packaged meats.
Yes.
The day before we went there, he's 80 years of age, he sent up some hams to the tower. Anyhow, I couldn't believe my ears. I sat behind him in that geese, he flew it. And he calls up at the check-in point and says, Rose, and he goes, hams? And the guy says, straight in approach.
Yes, Bill Rose is his name. He had a number of tents in Tentland and turned it on for all of his guests. Neil Rear and Thelma were two of his guests, and there were a number of others, maybe a dozen or so people, that were his guests, who were entertained by him at his expense for the entire show. Aerobatics, well, just as I got a little bit familiar with Mustangs, I found myself not looking at all the aerobatics. There was so much of it on. In fact, in the end, I was thinking to myself, why do people want to do that in an aeroplane? It feels as if they're trying to pull the wings off. I counted in about 2 or 3 minutes that one bloke did, on an average, 12 per minute flick rolls. Just bang, bang, bang. And these aircraft, the majority of them had a roll rate of 420 degrees per second. That's a circle and a third, just while it takes you to say 1 little second. They're over and back up the right way again. They love flying near the ground as well. They love putting on a display. And it was absolutely riveting. The thing that took my interest most was the smoothness of the aerobatic display by this 1944, I think it was, Beach 18. Not pulling more than 2 Gs throughout and doing rolls, Cuban-aids, loops, etc., etc. I was just mesmerised by the performance. Formation aerobatics in like aircraft and unlike aircraft, there's a mixture there, but there's plenty of threesomes and foursomes of multiple aircraft. The man in the Waco with his skull and crossbones on the back end did a marvellous job. He was trying to pull it to pieces. And the bloke in the Red Bull helicopter was doing things that you just normally don't see with a chopper, as you already know when you... The speed events took place one morning, and you can also get these aircraft slow or stopped. The one on the right pretty well stopped in mid-air there. There was an electric aircraft, didn't make any noise, performing a little bit like a glider, a powered glider. It has an endurance of 1 hour and 30, 1 hour 40 minutes, but in thermals they can keep it going for up to 5 hours. This rocket aircraft caught my ear. You know how jets make a fair bit of noise? Well, this makes double the amount of noise, really, really shrill. But the amazing thing about it was, when he shuts the throttle off, it stops in an instant. When you shut off a jet engine or a normal engine, it takes some seconds for it to spool down or wind down, but this thing just shuts off in a snap. And when he taxis, you hear as he fires it up. It was amazing. Climbs at about 600 feet a minute, then he turns it off and glides down, does a few tricks, a few aerobatics, then turns it on and up he goes again at another 600 feet a minute. These were some of the machines at the speed event. Genesis, I caught a glimpse of going past. You could go for a ride in a flimsy aircraft if you wanted to, and you could buy one for $12,500. When I was there, our dollar was about parity, so that value was pretty good going. The Goodyear blimp flew overhead on a few times, a few occasions. Nice to see that there. There's the Ford Trimotor that David's been for flying twice. No? Yes, once. David and Murray Corf got themselves a ride in that for $55. That was cheap. Little jets. I heard someone say that one organisation has ordered 250 of, I think that one there, They intend to position them all over America so that businessmen don't have to go through the rigmaroles at airports. If you subscribe to this society and say, I want to go from Perth to Kalgoorlie on Friday morning, you go out to the airport, you don't have to go through the machinery and the checking in program and be there an hour early. Since you're part of the group, your pilot is waiting for you, you drive out to the airport, step out of your car, into the aircraft and off you go. So they're going to position 250 of those throughout America for that service. So there were twin jets and turbines in light aircraft and so on. This one here was very interesting, the Honda jet. I had a long talk to the man about the engine not being attached to the fuselage. It's attached to the wing, and as the bloke explained to me, he said, well, this is the strongest part of the aircraft through here from side to side. So when I put the engine close to it, he said the idea of having the engine strapped to the fuselage out the back here would involve a great deal of strengthening of the fuselage, a great deal of weight, and it was much easier to do this. It's a revolutionary change from what we normally expect. The dream lifter came in, and this is what Boeing moved their fuselage parts around in. It's a 747, which would normally go back there and then drop down. It goes back there and goes up. That's built around a second-hand 747, which they got from some Asian airlines, probably a trade-in. John Travolta was there in the Qantas 707. Nice to see, bit of home there.
He blew an engine leaving.
Oh, did he? He blew an engine on the way up. Qantas would have helped there. There's an unusual U-2 there with two cockpits. The aircraft that made the most noise, apart from the rocket racer, was the Raptor, and it was exceedingly noisy, and I'd say that there's probably 500,000 people with impending ear problems. And it flew around with these condensation patterns over the wing almost continually. That was a great shot, which I thought was very nice. The Harrier was there, as was the Osprey. It flies like that, but it doesn't taxi like that. It was just for display. Very interesting aircraft, doesn't make a lot of noise. Whereas this one makes an enormous amount of noise but achieves the same result. This one has a small volume of air going down at high speed. The previous one had a small volume of air going down at low speed. Hawker Hunter. Nice to see one of them around. And that was the fire associated with the ground attack. It made me jump about a foot. My friends didn't tell me anything about this, they just watched me wait. The seaplane base, we spent a morning there. Very interesting to have a look at what was available there. And so, from the sublime to the ridiculous, they had the ornithopter there, roaming around, and when you see this crazy copter as well. And so that's about all I've got for you, but it was absolutely amazing. I could go back again. Murray Corf was on his 4th visit, and when I heard that he was going there for his 4th time, I thought, how can he do that? I could go back tomorrow, and I don't think I'd have to see the same thing twice. So thank you for that.